Hey guys, it's Kay with OK Quilting. You know, some days we quilt and some days we do battle. And today I am battling. And I know that some days you guys battle too. So I thought I'd let you battle with me. So let me tell you what's going on. I've got this beautiful quilt on my frame, which is for me, by the way. And I found this cute pattern from Ann Bright. And I think that it's a pretty intricate pattern, and I think that that is what's throwing my machine off. I did not resize it smaller or anything, so I don't think there's anything wrong with the pattern. I don't know what's going on. So it's a pretty good sized quilt. It's about 70 by 80-ish, and I set up the whole thing, and I quilted the first couple of rows just fine, and then I got to the third row and drag and drop didn't work, and some things just started going crazy. So I felt like I had a little, when I was rolling my quilt yesterday, I had a zap. And I thought that I've had that happen a couple of times, and I feel like it could be a static electricity issue. And so I do have rubber mats on my floors, so I have these anti-fatigue mats. I was not standing on one down there. Maybe I should stand on one when I roll the quilt. So that's one issue. So because I knew that had happened, my first level of attack was to think, okay, maybe I screwed up something in ProStitcher. So I actually, I have my version, and I did a repair of my version. Now we'll talk, if you need help with that, leave a comment and I can always do a video about how to repair your version or to upgrade. But anyways, I repaired it. Didn't fix the problem. And then all of a sudden, I started having the problem again, but at first it was just that the motors would turn off. But then later on, it started telling me that I had a buffer underflow. And I know that a lot of you guys have dealt with that. And so then I thought, okay, so the situation with a buffer underflow is that basically, I have a brain and the brawn. So the brain is ProStitcher and the brawn is my machine. The brain is not able, it's got menopause fog, let's face it, and it's having a hard time sending the information to the machine fast enough. So what was happening is the machine would just stop. There was no thread break or anything, and then it would wait a few seconds and it would go like 10 more stitches, and then pretty much it would just freeze up. And I was having to, I made it through this last row. I had to start and stop a few times, but I made it about here, and then I changed something. So I want to talk about what I changed. So usually we build the whole edge to edge, right? That's how we do things. But back in the day, that's not how we did things. We only had a row or two, and we kept moving it down. So that is what I did. I actually went in and I cropped off the whole bottom of my design, hoping that would speed up the transfer. Oh, so by the way, I also slowed down my machine, which y'all know how much I hate to do that. I want my machine going at turbo mode. And honestly, on this kind of a design, it can't go that fast anyways, but I did slow it down. So I dealt with software, didn't seem to fix the issue. I dealt with speed, didn't fix the issue. I changed the design by chopping it up, and I made it, I pretty much made it through the rest of that row, I think. So now I need to advance my quilt, reposition, get my machine on, the whole shebang, and then we're gonna see if we can get some quilting done. But and I'm going to let you see if it worked or not, but I know that this is an issue. So those are some of the things I tried. So let's see if it works. All right. I just want to prove to you guys that I really do unplug. So I'm going to plug back in. All right. My carriage is on. Turn on the machine, wait for the beep, turn on ProStitcher. Now before I left, I actually did a pretty good oiling. I cleaned it up and oiled it. And I know I'm going to run out of bobbin here in a second, but we'll just put that back in. And when I oil, I take my thread out and I just run the machine. Let me take the bobbin back out. So I oil, and then I let the oil work through like that. And now I'm going to pop my bobbin case back in. Make sure you hear the pop. Let's see if I can get this threaded. Probably needs to have a sharp point. Whoops. I always try to cut my thread at an angle, and usually I can slide right down that groove on the front of the needle, except for some reason it doesn't want to go. There we are. All right, ProStitcher's coming up. All right, so I need to advance my quilt. I don't need to do drag and drop, because first of all, it wasn't working anyways. And the machine's turned off. So I know that this was my last start point because I leave my threads. So I want to make sure I can get to that point when I advance. Okay. We'll clamp everything back up. So this quilt does have Minky on the bottom. I love Minky. Love it, love it, love it. All right, and now we need to make sure that things are straight. I am floating today. I was a little worried about this quilt. I'm a little worried about that. That's falling apart right there. Oh! We'll fix it as we go. Luckily, this quilt's for me. All right. So the screen looks perfectly normal. I'm going to move you over here so you can see the screen. The first thing that I want to do is place my needle where that last row started. I'm going to do that right now. Now I'm going to go File, Design, Open. And my original pattern was called Super Bloom. When I chopped off the end of it, I named it Super Bloom 2-row, which is a little bit of a misnomer because I really have basically 2 rows and a half. All right. So that loaded in, so it's ready to stitch that top row. And I think that's a full row, but I'm not totally sure that it's a full row, that it wasn't cropped. So I'm going to go to New Start and End. I'm going to use my bottom jump button to jump my start point down a row. I'm going to go to Modify, Reposition, Start Point. Okay, so now my design has jumped up. Oh, actually, that wasn't what I wanted to do. I made a mistake. So let's undo that. I actually do want my start point. Well, I want to be positioned there. And where it is, that actually works fine because it has put me back there. And then what I really am going to do is start stitching here. So I do want to make sure that I can get that whole row in. You know, I think it's got that whole row. Okay, so now, I hope you can see this. My start point is there. So I used this start point to line myself up, and I have moved this start point so it's going to bring me down there, and I should be ready to go. But I haven't basted yet. So let me turn you a little bit. I think you'll be able to see. Now, when I have a quilt, I always baste the edges, and I am going to baste from the bottom up. On this side, it won't matter. And some of you are screaming right now saying, Kay, you didn't baste that. You're right, I didn't. I just used my regular old stitch. I'm hoping that we can see this side though, because I have some looseness here. This side is totally cut on the bias, so of course I'm going to have looseness. So I'm going to start at the bottom, bring up that thread. Let me just check and make sure you can see this. On this side, you can see that there's some looseness. So we are definitely going to start at the bottom. Bring up our thread. And then as we quilt up, and I'm not using channel locks or anything, it's just free motion. So I have to kind of make sure it stays put, but I'm also pushing pretty hard back here. And if I get a little bit of fluffy, it's okay. Whoops. So I missed a couple of places, so I'm just probably going to tack those back down. Sometimes when I'm trying to be so careful with my fingers, I don't want to get too close. Okay. Remember, all of that is going to be in my binding. Only I'm going to see it. And you. And if you tell anyone, we're not going to be friends anymore. All right. So now we should be ready to go. But I am never that happy about that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to a point I know on this quilt. And I'm going to put it right there. And I am going to zoom in on it. And I'm going to make sure that that is exactly where I have it placed. And it is. And I'm going to do the same thing, whoops, down at the other end of the quilt. Somewhere. Maybe more than one somewheres. I'm going to find something that I can match up. Zoom in. Okay, now this end is a little bit, tiny bit off, like just a tiny bit. But I'm going to adjust for this end. Let's see, is that higher or lower? Actually, that's going to be okay. This design is really tight, so the fact that it's a little bit up is going to be okay. All right. Let's push the house again, refresh so we can see what we're doing. All right, let's cross our fingers. So what I'm doing, I have a full row and a full row. So I am going to quilt this row over and over and over. I'm using this row to reposition. So I will do that each time in case we'll have to see if my crop works because it was not working earlier. So let's see if it works now. And I left myself a good amount of space on the side of this. No judgment. I get to do what I want. Oh, I'm sorry. You probably couldn't see most of that. Okay. But here we are off in quilting. I am going to leave those threads there. That's important. Let's see what happens. I'm not going to speed it up or anything, but I'm just going to let this record and let you see what happens. All right, we finally ran out of bobbin thread. I was expecting it way back here. I love deco bobs. These things go forever. So they are from Wonderfill, And I actually have some. If you have a retailer in your area who carries them, you should get some. And if you don't have a retailer in your area who gets them, you should go check out my shop, because I love them so much that I don't want you to be without them. They are 80 weight threads, and they honestly go forever, as you just saw. I mean, there was hardly any thread on that bobbin, and it just did 2/3 of the row. Oh, so I have an air compressor, and my Forte has a black baffle back here, so I can't blow everything into the machine. Alright, so what you saw me do there was oil the machine, pull the thread out of the needle so I could move it around a little bit. Did I take some thread off this one? I think I did. Okay, well, if it catches, I'll take some more off. Okay, so I'm putting the bobbin in like a 9 or a lowercase q, bringing that thread up through the slot, under the little tongue. There we go. Find the right spot and then give it a click. Okay, now I'm not just going to go back to stitching on my quilt. Okay, because that's asking for disaster. So I'm just going to do some pet stitching over here, because I'm expecting that it will have some loops for the first little while. So it had loops for the first while. The loops are now worked out. The loops are because the oil has to get distributed around the bobbin area. All right, no big deal. It is a big deal though if you don't try your bobbin, because then that mess is underneath your quilt. Oh gosh, I forgot to do something really important. I forgot to mark where I ran out of thread. So usually what I do is I'll put something there to point to it, and I didn't, but I found it. Okay, because I can look at where I've stitched, and because I caught it quickly, that worked. If I hadn't caught it quickly, which happened to me earlier, oh man, it's hard to find in this crazy fabric. All right, so there is my thread break. It's not really a break, the bobbin ran out, but I'm still going to go back a good 1/2 inch before that. I'm probably 3/4 of an inch of stitching. I'm putting my needle there. I'm doing ProStitcher, new start and end, auto, turn it on, turn it off, and now it has moved there. Now I'll touch quilt, run, proceed. It is right exactly on that line. Now I'm going to pause this for a second. We've been doing really well here. I'm going to test this out, and I'm going to turn off customize. So that means that now my Opti stitch is engaged. It may still be this slow. ProStitcher kind of knows what it can handle, but we're going to see what happens and if we have buffering issues, since we made it 2/3 of the quilt without one. That's quite a bit faster than it was going when I was telling it what to do. So let's see what happens. we did the last third at normal speed. Woohoo! Okay, so we can bring up my bobbin thread. Now, when I'm using this method, drag and drop doesn't work all that well. It's not bad, but what I usually just do is a reposition. Well, I'm glad you stuck around with me and saw what happened. You know, most days are much easier than that, but this was a little bit tricky today because I wasn't sure what was happening. And that happens when we start having a problem, we start getting panicky. We've got to calm down and think. Okay, so because I had felt the shock, the first thing I thought of was maybe I'm having an electrical issue with ProStitcher. So I reloaded the software. I repaired it. I didn't actually reload it. That didn't work. Okay, so then I thought, well, you know, we talk about all the time to slow things down. So I did. Also, did not work. And so then I realized, and I had already taken the proactive step, which I want you to do too, of saving my edge-to-edge design. Once I built it, I save it as a selected, and so basically it's a design file just as one piece. That's way smarter than having it be a workspace. Okay, workspace definitely has its place, and I love workspace, but doing an edge-to-edge is not a time when you need a workspace. So save as selected makes a smaller file. I have never had this problem before with when I've done that. And that's when I realized, well, I might have to go back to the old-fashioned way so what I did was I had my design up and I just cropped off the bottom of it. I just like as if I were cropping the bottom at the bottom of the quilt. I came over to this side, bing, and I came down here, bing, and then I made sure that the whole rest of the quilt was in that space, and I just deleted it, and then I resaved it. I showed you that. I saved it as number 2 or something, or the short form. Anyways, so I still had the original. You always want the original. But I also had the second short version. And I never had another issue, not one. So I'm guessing it just seems like that probably was my issue, right? Well, I'm happy to say that it's done. It looks beautiful. And honestly, everything just lined up very well. Now I'm down to, I've got to trim it and put a binding on it. We all know how much I love that. But of course, I will use my trusty machine because Mr. Thumb does not like hand sewing. I hope that you might have learned something that will help you today. And thanks for sticking around and seeing, learning a few things about how to deal with the Buffer Underflow. Take care and have a great day. Don't forget to like and follow.